We're live in Las Vegas. It's Alex Belfield talking to the biggest stars, and Joe Piscopo is a legend. How are you?
Great to see you, Alex. Great to be on the BBC, baby.
Well, it's really nice to talk to you. I'll tell you why, because there aren't many performers performing today who can do everything. Sing, dance, comede, play instruments. I mean, you're one of few now, really, aren't you?
Yeah, we did a kind of a retro show. We just did kind of a throwback to the way Vegas was. And that's when I came in here. Generally, people know me as a comedian from Saturday Night Live, right? So I said, well, I could do that. But I always enjoyed watching the guys like Mr. Sinatra and like these guys that would just do a little something. Dean Martin. They used to do jokes all the time. Sammy Davis Jr., some of the great entertainers. So I said, let me try to do everything at once. And I've got myself into it. It's a lot of work, man. Let me tell you something, but it's a lot of fun.
I think the Dean shtick about being drunk and all that stuff was just so classic, and that's what we remember him as now, as a great entertainer. Probably not as a great singer, and that presumably is the greatest compliment of all.
Yeah, very good point. He may have been the greatest entertainer in that sense, an all-around entertainer, whereas Frank Sinatra could nail a song like nobody else. And Sammy was just a spectacular artist on stage. But nowadays you got the new guys doing, they have fun on stage. If you see Barry Manilow right here, just right across the hall, doing a sensational show, and Michael Bublé, Harry Connick. There's a young kid named Tony Dessert. You can check out Tony. He's a dear friend of mine, doing a lot of the standards, but having fun on stage at the same time. I have the luxury of having the comedic background, so I throw that in. And like tonight, man, it was like the crowd dug the comedy. So I told a couple old jokes. I said, let me tell some jokes, and even what Barry does across the whole, Barry Manilow, it's a lot of just a single light and singing, man. So I said to Barry the other day, it was so funny, after I saw the show, very impressive, this is great. And then he did an Elvis song just by himself on a stool with a microphone and a pin spot, and he says to me, without a net. And there it is, you're just doing your show without a net. And I think the audience gets it and hopefully digs it.
I think we're all kind of getting a bit sick of the American Idol stuff and the Pop Idol stuff in the UK, because we see them, they come and they go, they never seem to stick around very much. Probably a little bit more so over here. But to see someone who can do everything, I saw the Manilow show the other day, and it does take your breath away to see someone with just pure talent, a bit like yourself. Danny Gans is another one that just, for an hour and a half, just purely entertains. How much does it take out of you as a performer?
It's a good question. My life is a rehearsal. I have small children. I can't seem to stay married. There's probably a reason for that. I go through my wives pretty good, but my kids stick right by me. I'm telling you. My new book. That's why I'm doing material. My new book. Too many wives, not enough children. I said, but because I'm rehearsing the whole time, man. It's like I'm with the kids, and then every second I have, and they get to know the show because I'm rehearsing with the little 2-year-old on my leg. But you got to rehearse. You have to be, so when you step on stage, you can relax and have fun. As a reference, interesting, talking on the BBC here, and a privilege to do so, I might say, is I watched Frank Sinatra, I mentioned to you before we went on the air, is I watched him doing a tribute to Princess Grace somewhere in England, in London, and it was a reference tape for me where he was sensational. He did One for My Baby, and he acted it out with a full 40-piece. It was the London Symphony, might have been, and it was just a sensational thing. And then I wanted to work before I came here to Vegas just to stay on my feet, So I said to my agent, just get me out there. And they said, well, there's this Royal Caribbean boat that's going, and they got great theaters, and I went, get me on there. I bang out 4 shows. Half the audience were Brits. We're from Great Britain, and we had a ball. And I went, and one of the joys for me was, because I'm basically I'm an American actor. Some folks know some of the films, but to have one British lady, she must have been like 85, came over and said, oh, you were so good. I so enjoyed your show. She came over, we took pictures, and the conductor at the time on the boat was born in London, and I just have a great affection from Great Britain, my father being the captain in the Second World War, so I'm very hip to that. So it's nice to absorb all of that and then bring it onto stage and then execute it for hopefully a crowd that digs what you're doing.
I interviewed Frank Sinatra Jr. last year. I did an hour special with him, and it was fascinating talking to him. The one question I asked him, which he didn't answer, was Frank Sinatra a nice man? Now, you knew him. Was he?
I saw nothing but the greatest man, one of the great men I've ever met. Nice. And like you heard on stage, where when I met him, he said, hey, Joe, baby. And I felt so comfortable. I said, can I call you Frank? He went, no. He had a sense of humor. And I don't care. And again, thanks to Harry Connick and the kid Tony Dessert and Mike Bublé, people rediscover. You see those young chicks at the show, man? Hopefully they're waiting for me outside. But I said,
you're married.
No, I'm going through a divorce. I said, I'm new. I'm decompressing. I'm on stage. These girls are looking at me, man. I'm going, hey, hi, but I can't. I'm a dork dad. I'm a dad, and I'm not hip enough to be on stage and go, hey, hi, like Frank Sinatra did, and then be able to flirt with the chicks, because then I lose my train of thought for the show. You know what I mean?
Come on, there's got to be some perks to being in show business.
I don't know. Afterwards, not on stage, I'm working for the crowd, and then I said, geez, and these chicks would look at that today. I said, I'm an old guy with kids, man. That's my priority. But I always admire how Frank Sinatra did it. I don't know how he did it with the girls and the drinking and the smoking. God bless him. But this man was a great man. Always treated me with the greatest of respect. When I first did him on Saturday Night Live, the impression of him, I wrote him a note, made sure he knew he was my number one hero. My father, who's my real hero, told me this guy is an Italian, and I have relatives. My cousin Dominic lives in Surrey, in Great Britain, and you struggle as an Italian, especially early on. So we appreciated that when Frank Sinatra went through the prejudice. Oh, was he connected? Was he with the mob? Hey, come on, this is a great guy, great entertainer, and I always had nothing but a great relationship, a great sense of humor, and a warm-hearted, raised more money for charity than any entertainer anywhere. So I just have the fondest of memories of this great man.
The last thing I want to talk to you about before we go, maybe this is me being an anorak radio guy, but the one thing I loved about your performance was that amazing bass that you have in your voice, and you kind of go up and then you go down and kind of rock the auditorium, which is tremendous. And I saw the look on the ladies' faces. It is an aphrodisiac, those deep notes, isn't it?
I hope so. I'm feeling my way through, man. I said, I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
How do you brew those notes other than smoking about 7,000 cigarettes a day?
No, you know what's so funny? You're funny you say that. I'm embarrassed a little bit, but it's like I don't drink when I'm working, and like chunks at a time. Like now we got the 6-week run here, and then we go. If I have a chunk of time where I'm working, I do not drink alcohol because I don't smoke, and I just learned to stretch the voice. I'm working with Vincent Falcone, who worked with Frank Sinatra all those years. I really trained myself into it, but I don't know why my register, and I'm being frank here because I think the English listen to the radio more so than Americans do. So that's why I'm talking. I hope I'm not babbling too much, but it's funny, the register of Frank Sinatra's voice, because when he did A Man and His Music, he did that sensational, there was a 2-record set at the time, and his voice, I could feel the register of my voice hitting his voice, so I could match some of those. So I went back and I checked some vital recordings from Sextet in Paris, from the London Philharmonic, and I may be wrong, but it was Frank Sinatra in London performing, and he did that trick with his voice where he slid down, but he could hit his range was incomparable. So I just studied it, worked on it with Vincent Falcone. So but you got to, Alex, after we go off the air, you got to tell me how I can get chicks using that device, because I don't know. I'm still new at this. I'm going through it, and
Joe, great to meet you. Great to see you performing live. And if you want to see a proper man with a proper show, in its rawest fashion, where you just basically live and die every show by what you say. If your joke isn't funny, they're not going to laugh, are they? I mean, it really is the most nerve-wracking job in the world, really, because they're not going to compliment you if you're not very good, are they, in a situation like this? You're very, very close to the audience. It's very intimate.
You're as good as your last show. And we wanted to come here. Mr. Ribas, who owns the property here, the Las Vegas Hilton, we wanted to come into the cabaret here because I do showrooms. I do casino showrooms, 800,000 seats. And just last week we did 1,400 folks, and that's a whole nother ball game where it's bigger, but it's more, the music is more refined. I have to be way on top of my game. Raw, going back to what you said, Alex, exactly what it is. In this intimate setting, I prefer this setting. The one lady said to me, "Oh, Joe, you should be in the showroom." No. This Frank Sinatra, when he did the Copa Room, he did those clubs in London or in Paris, they were a couple hundred seats, man. This theater's like 400 seats. It's perfect. And you are do or die is right. And I threw those jokes out, wondering I might die on this, but I'm going there, man. But in a big room, I wouldn't do that. It's a good point. In a big room,
you wouldn't take the risk.
It wouldn't take you can't, because there's too many people, man. So here, if you die, you could joke your way out of it and go into the next tune, So it's a good experience for me.
You literally can see the whites of the eyes, and the audience did love you tonight. Congratulations on the show. It's tremendous. It's on here at the Hilton in Las Vegas. Thanks for talking to me.
Alex, a real pleasure. Thank you so much.